Welcome to AI to Z.
In Season 4, we uncover AI's industry-wide revolution, the skill code for upskilling, and the human leadership essential to its success. Here are the highlights.
You know, AI to some extent has become the buzzword, right? Everybody wants to have AI attached to their organization or to their workflows or to be able to tell their clients that they're working with AI. First thing that I would say is, well, before we get to that, let's talk about two things. One, what's your business objective? What's the outcome that you're trying to seek? When are you trying to achieve that, outcome? And are you prepared to pay the price for it? So that's the first step. The second step is really understanding what AI is. I think a lot of people misunderstand what AI is, and they'll sometimes confuse it with machine learning, which is fine, or automation. So AI, obviously, I think we are in a golden age. We are probably at the cusp of another, let's call it, humongous transformation from humanity. Whether you want to go back in time and talk about the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, the advent of the computers, I think AI is really going to be doing and is doing the same thing. Now, the industries, obviously, that can be impacted and are impacted are, well, I don't think there's going to be an industry that it's not going to be impacted. But some of the key ones, for example, are finance, media, retail, healthcare especially, I think is going to be seeing a lot of benefits associated with it. In some aspect as well, security, or what I would call social economics, are going to be impacted significantly. There are some countries, and I won't name them in the world, that are already using AI to effectively have social scores for individuals that, should we say, operate in their ecosystems. So I think in that respect, AI can and will be utilized against a broad spectrum. But the key here is, what do you want it to do? Right. So let's talk about a couple of examples. Healthcare. One of the key aspects of healthcare is obviously avoiding human error, being able to go through massive quantities of data, massive quantities of results, and effectively having a system, having an AI that is going to learn as you go along, obviously with more data, and effectively also reduce the level of error that a human may have in terms of diagnostics, for example, X-ray, CAT scans, etc., cancer screenings. I think that is probably going to be one of the key areas we're going to see an immediate benefit. In finance, again, I'm seeing a lot of, and again, I won't name them, a lot of large financial institutions, banks, and everything else, sitting on these copious amounts of data, right? And the first thing that they're doing is they're saying, let's ingest this data, which is great. And then they're trying to figure out, how do we automate the ingest of the data? And then how do we use that to effectively interact on one hand with our customers, which I think is the easiest thing to do. I think if you think about it from an interaction perspective, the first area that you're going to notice an AI improvement, I think, from a finance perspective, is your chatbot, right? You had your old chatbots that were very kind of limited. Nowadays, you're slowly approaching the perspective where you might not even be able to tell if it's a human or not. Obviously, you're going to suspect it's AI. So you have a whole sector, I think, that's going to benefit. Less, let's call it, critically important, but again, if you're in the industry, it's going to be significant to you, is retail.
There's something about a new pathway to skill that they're finding that is at least interesting and works in this new setting that's hostile to learning. And so as I was writing up that proposal, I looked back across all that data and realized, well, we can't copy those folks. I knew this in 2018, 2019. Like, they're all doing things that really bend and break the rules. I called them shadow learners to get their skill. You could never write that into a standard operating procedure, but they were all fighting to protect the same things, the same set of conditions at work that would allow them to build a skill rapidly and well. And those are the 3 C's, and that's the skill code in the book. So the first third of the book talks about what can we learn from these learning deviants that all of us can and should protect if we want to enhance our skill at work. And that's challenge, complexity, and connection. Thankfully, in English, those 3 things all have a letter C that you can start them with. There was struggle was my first word for challenge, but in fact, challenge is a fit. But put simply, that's work near your limits. And there's lots of detail with each of these, and there's a 10-point checklist in the book. But work near your limits, engage with the broader picture, and build bonds of trust and respect. Those are the three: challenge, complexity, connection. The specific ordering of those, the sequence of those, and how they need to combine with one another, that is undone science, basically. I tried to build a single model of like a DNA strand. These are like the letters in DNA of skill. I tried to build a strand, and I realized there are some sequences that are common. But the world of work is so splintered now, so many new jobs, and it's so fast changing. It's better to give folks the alphabet. It's like giving folks the letters in DNA, and figure out locally for you in your context what sequences are healthy, make sense, and work, because there are going to be lots of different stories. So just putting the alphabet out there, I think, was the responsible move on my part. And then you can just look at your own context and say, are challenge, complexity, and connection in healthy supply or not? When they are, how can we copy that? When they're not, why not? How can we fix that? That kind of question.
Matt, so that kind of leads me to ask, why we need healthy challenge and healthy connection to learn, because I think we kind of need to set the foundation for the audience before we get into skill in inequity, inequality.
Sure. Yeah, it turns out it was fascinating, a real privilege to get to do about the year and a half of work going over all known scientific research about skill development across more than 13 scientific disciplines. That was a lot of reading and thinking. To notice that psychology, of course, has plenty of findings, and so does sociology relevant to skill development. But I found things in like kinesiology, sports psychology. I mean, there's novel findings over there that folks in psychology would view as relevant and so on. But in short, the basic core finding is that we build skill best when we are close to, but not at, our maximum ability to perform, our maximum challenge domain, like where we are struggling, but not there, not sort of at the boundary of our capability, close to it. We are performing less well than we otherwise could, and we are totally focused. Those are a few of the 10 criteria I list in this chapter. There's some more there, like you can get further into that territory with what's known as scaffolding from an expert. So an expert, if they're present, they can help you handle more of that challenge than you could on your own, for instance. But in short, there's a great literature in psychology known as the desirable difficulties literature, where if you build skill better when you are struggling. The interesting bit there is that there's a series of literatures basically that shows that human beings prefer not to struggle ever on anything. Like if you give people a choice, they will prefer not to feel uncomfortable, not to struggle, not to be in a situation where they're not performing their best, because we have a strong drive for competence and for feeling comfortable. And so in many ways, we've built systems or ways of interacting that sort of privilege feeling comfortable and not being challenged over being in that place where you're sweating to learn, basically. So that's challenge.
Another innovative way of thinking is if you really don't have the budget to engage a third-party consulting organization or even bring in or hire new talent, you can actually leverage the talent that is in the universities around you. So one interesting thing about the lung cancer project we did was we collaborated with George Mason University, which is basically in the backyard. Like DC has a lot of universities, so we were fortunate to collaborate with them and bring in a capstone project to do a part of the research. So collaborate with the universities close to you, at least to start the pilot project. And the second part of it is do an assessment of your organizational infrastructure. If you're a cloud organization already, that would be really helpful because cloud will enable you to spin up compute at your fingertips. And the fourth point I want to make is essentially think of other considerations, right? We talk a lot about responsible AI. I've done a lot of of work on ethical AI principles. So think of those things. How will there be bias and fairness, especially where you have to be very, very cognizant about use cases where there is criminal justice involved, where it has potential to go to a court of law. Those things you have to be more careful, and also compliance, right? Healthcare and financial institutions are regulated. So you want to make sure you build responsible AI and around the responsible AI principles. And lastly, the fifth one I want to say is make sure you check the box for the privacy and security of. And so any AI, whether it's generative AI, large language model, or traditional machine learning, uses data. So make sure your data is anonymized and obfuscated with all the personal details removed before you feed it into your algorithms. So those are some five things, simplifying it, but some category of things to consider.
No, that's great, Swathi. And I think the one thing that you hit, which I thought was fascinating, was tapping into the universities. I really like that idea, and it's not something that companies normally think of. So yeah. I think that's a great nugget for the audience to take away. Let's talk a little bit about generative AI. You kind of were talking about that as you were going through the 5 items, but it's exploded in popularity, as we were talking about. But often it gets linked to like deep fakes, right? So let's kind of move past the hype, and maybe you can share some exciting ways how generative AI is being used for positive applications, right? Pushing boundaries of what's possible, being able to do more with less.
Absolutely. So there are I want to say 2 major use cases of generative AI. The first one is putting the power of a chat GPT-like app in the hands of a consumer. So today, anybody above the age of 5 can literally use chat GPT. And I think that is where the tipping point of AI has come in.
And so as technology evolves, what is it going to do for us? Is it taking away our recruiters? Is it taking away? It's never going to take away our salespeople. It's never going to take away the ability to have a relationship with your client. So we need to use these tools to make our back offices, our firms, more efficient. How do we make recruiting more efficient so that our recruiters can actually be talking to the talent versus filling out paperwork versus always putting in different data and everything like that? What are the new tools that are coming out down the pipe that are going to make us more efficient? Because, I mean, I honestly believe you can't take away the people from the staffing industry. So let's take advantage of these let's not be afraid of the new technologies. Let's be curious. Let's try them. I mean, I think the beauty of people that go into the staffing industry is they're quick to try new things, they're quick to fail, and then they're quick to change and they try something new. And so I think there's going to be a lot of that coming down the pipe. Some of the new HR tech that's coming out is pretty fascinating, but again, it still doesn't take away the people part.
Oh, exactly. And that kind of leads me, I think, to our last question, Susan, talking about artificial intelligence, obviously playing such a significant role in rapidly transforming all industries, not just the staffing industry. What advice would you give organizations as a whole to maintain your culture and navigate these changes? You want to kind of stay ahead of the curve, but you don't want to be too quick to jump on the bandwagon if it's a tool that's not going to necessarily work for them. So how do you kind of maintain your culture throughout all these changes?
Well, I mean, I personally believe it's the connection, good leadership, connecting with your teams. Don't expect that the new technology is going to erase a team member or get rid of a team member. Look at creative ways to redeploy your teams so that you can take advantage of their high skills of their connecting with humans and having those conversations. Again, one of the things we really do poorly in our industry is the consultant care, is the imagine if you can redeploy talent that you've already found, you've already have in your pipeline, but if you could redeploy them at the next job that's coming down the pike. So I constantly say to people, don't just treat them as widgets. They are people. So create opportunities where you can constantly create new engagement. But I really do believe that embracing the new technologies will make your firms more efficient, which allows you then to create those opportunities to be more connected with your people. The technology isn't going away. It's only going to get better. So you as an owner of a company need to look at how you are going to make those adjustments, because if you don't, you will lose.
30 years ago, when I was leading my first team, one of the things that I had to do as a manager was I had to spell check their work, right? I had to proof it, because mistakes could be really costly to us if they got in front of someone more senior. Now, as a manager, I would never spell check something, right? It's already automated. The AI technology behind spell checking grammar is so sophisticated. It's reliable. But Gen AI is a new game. So instead of just using AI, like we've been using it for decades to do research, to do simple things, it's now generating content for the first time. So it's generating visuals, it's generating writing, it's generating decks. And while that's all terrific, those are things that a lot of entry-level people do. It's even generating code. So now instead of, it's almost like we used to check spelling, and now we don't need to. Now, all of a sudden, the new thing we have to check is quality and accuracy. And we have to teach our people, yes, you got this beautiful thing generated, but it's actually factually incorrect, or it references a source that doesn't exist, or the context of this recommendation in the document actually does not work given the industry that this is for. And so we have to, as managers, realize that these things are coming in, and we have to teach our folks new skills in order to use them successfully.
Right, which kind of leads me to ask, like, what are some of the implications of AI for a modern manager?
Oh, Jesus. I think the biggest, hardest one is talent. I think AI is doing a lousy job in finding talent. If you think about it, models are built to replicate success, right? Or to apply logic. If I've got a team and they're doing fine, but I need them to do better, I actually do not need a candidate who fits in the model of my existing team. I need someone smarter, faster, more innovative, better. And so if my model is using the job description that populated this team before, I'm just going to get more of that. One of my favorite stories, there's a young software developer that I coach. She's based out of Boston. Brilliant. She gets promoted like every 18 months. She had gone to her boss to talk about how she really felt that there was a place in the team for a role that was doing more of a full stack development, but also working with their data sets. And as she talked to him, he said, "This is brilliant. We should do this. It's going to be a band higher than where you are now. You're the person for it. It's done. Let's go for it." He said, "I got approval." And then he came back to her and he's like, "Oh, shoot, we just need like a job description to go into the HR system so that we can, quote, like interview you. But what we'll do is like, we'll put the job description in, you'll apply, it'll go through the system, and then the system will automatically move you into the proper salary band." He said, "I'm so busy. Could you just write this up for me?" She said, fine. She wrote up the job description, submitted it, and he said, "Oh gosh, I need you to just apply for me because we want to get this straightened out on Monday." So she applied on Friday. Friday night at 5:30, she gets an email telling her that they appreciate her interest, but she will not be considered for the position. And she called me in tears. And she said, "Did they change their minds? Like, did somebody higher up in the organization decide that I'm not really the right person for it? Are they going in a different direction?" Like, no, that's screened out by some model. Some model was looking for like a computer science degree, and they didn't realize that a cognitive science degree is a computer science degree, and it just like bumped you out. I said, this is a model screen. There was no human involved. You just need to let your boss know. Everything is going to be fine. So she messaged her boss and said, "Hey, something weird happened." And he laughed his head off. He's like, "Oh my God, I'll fix that for you." They fixed it. She had the job on Monday. So here you have a situation where a brilliant person wrote a job description that was already shaped for her, and the system bumped her out. So the models aren't that great.
We've relearned, or we've been re-humbled by the what's happened to us coming out of COVID. Like, people forgot how to communicate. People forgot how to talk. The number of sales leaders I talk to that their sales teams, they lack confidence. They don't know how to write. They're struggling with messaging. Well, these are fundamental skills that you still got to practice. You still, you need to understand, like, what for example, like, how does everybody in your executive team, can they articulate the problems we solve, how we solve them differently or better than our competition? Where do we do it, and where's our proof? If everybody can't tell that in a succinct story, that's a gap. So, like, I think fundamentals of, like, I think you and I joked that one day a month ago is AI will never replace the art of being nice, I believe. And when you're nice and you create someone to smile and you make them feel a certain way, like, AI can't do that, in my opinion. So bringing energy to the room, setting expectations, being a good listener, AI isn't going to I don't think document your CRM as well as a human could. Maybe prove me wrong. Maybe it can. AI cannot. What about checking our ego? So sometimes our ego gets in the way of internal relationship, external relationships, and then patience. Like, we have to have patience. So these are all fundamental things. Those are things I wrote about that I think I didn't realize how important were going to be now when I wrote back in 2020. But these are skills that I'm still not always good at. And these are the things where I have to constantly remind myself, like, hey, these are the skills I used when I was in corporate to help me achieve some results maybe I didn't even think I would ever do in my life, but I did. And now I'm like, well, I want to keep doing that. So I'm going to keep focusing on these fundamental skills. I'm still going to use technology where it makes sense. But in the end, it's like, if I use AI to be the best, pro NFL football player, and all of a sudden I get out in the field and I'm, 5'3" and 126 pounds, I'm probably not going to do that well out there. I'm going to get hurt. So it's like, you still got to get in the weight room. You still got to get in the track. You still got to eat well. Same thing in business. You still got to practice. You still got to understand, like, why does our product need us? You still got to follow a sales process. Like, are we going to force deals in? Or are we going to meet customers where they are? So I think my view right now, and we always can change because nothing's forever, but AI right now is a great, like a motorcycle and a sidecar. Is my little buddy. But I still got to do the work, and anyway, I'll get off my soapbox there.
Thanks for joining us on the AI to Z podcast with Anna Frazzetto. If you found value in today's episode, consider following for more insightful STEM discussions. We'll be back with another deep dive. Until then.